Hello, costume loving friends. I am Laura Ingalls Gunn, and today I'm going to be sharing the historical Halloween fancy dress costume that I'm going to be making. Now, this challenge is being hosted by Lady Rebecca Fashions and Kiralee Cosplay. I will link to their amazing YouTube channels in the description below. And this is such a fun challenge. But many of you may be asking, what is a historic Halloween fancy dress costume? Well, the popularity of this concept really came to fruition during the Victorian era. Victorians loved to socialize, and they expanded upon the idea of the masked ball, which has been held in Italy and France for many, many centuries. And the Victorians would take elements from various other eras and often combine them with their fashions of the day. So you might see a bustle era take on Marie Antoinette, or a Regency period Grecian princess, along with many other funny and amazing themes. And so when I began looking for inspiration, I turned to Pinterest, which I'm sure so many of you do as well. And I also was really wanting to use things that I had in my stash. I didn't want to buy anything new. So as I'm looking through the images, I decided I know what will be perfect. I have this beautiful silk stripe, and it's sort of a cross shot of the gold and the rust color that I got on clearance for $3 a yard. I was only able to purchase 5 yards, so that was going to affect what I could make. And then I had this sort of Loden color linen that I never really knew what to use it for. So I thought, okay, I've got a silk, I've got a beautiful linen that I can use for the lining. So let's select a costume that would work really well. Now, I love the 18th century. Marie Antoinette, Palace of Versailles, King Louis XVI. It really makes my heart go pitter-patter. And I knew that I actually had two very historical patterns. This little sweet gem is from the 1930s, and I also loved the cute little short length and the pannier, the side swags. I believe it's pronounced panier in French, but we say pannier, tomato. Now, the other pattern that I have, it's a good opportunity to talk about sort of the dark side of fancy dress costumes. So this is a pattern that belonged to my mom, and you can kind of see that they've also included what they're calling a Spanish dancer among other costuming options. And when I was looking at historical Halloween costumes, there are patterns that you may come across that just really aren't appropriate for use today. An excellent example that I can give to you, I'm an interior designer, so I have a degree in interior design. And one of the costumes I noticed, it was labeled Oriental. And the terms Orientalism and chinoiserie Those are terms that are European interpretations of Chinese, East Asian, and Far East artistic traditions. They apply to the decorative arts, garden design, and architecture, and a few other things. But these terms should not be used to describe people. And so that was just one example when I came across a costume that said Oriental. It's just not a term that we would use to describe people today. And there are other images that might be a bit unsettling. So if you decide to look up the term historical Halloween or fancy dress costume, just be aware of that. And so I decided that I was going to try to use these two patterns. And in working with what I already had, my thought was I had a lot of really beautiful black lace that I just really can't see myself using anytime in the future. It has a beautiful drape, so pretty, and I thought, wow, could I put this all together for a queen bee costume? And so I've laid everything out. I'm ready to begin cutting. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge because stripes are always fun. And the reason why I got this beautiful piece of silk, 5 yards for $15, was because several of the threads are pulled in various places. So I'm going to have to very carefully lay out my patterns to cut around that. Now, the pattern itself is not historically accurate per se as to how you would construct a traditional 18th century gown. This is the Big Four's idea of what the gown would have been. So purists, avert your eyes. But that said, I am still going to use historical practices. And of course, my fabrics that I selected are historically accurate. And I will wear underpinnings such as my chemise, my petticoat. I'm not sure until I get further along in the construction process if I will be wearing my side hoops, also called panniers, or if it will simply just need a bum roll. So as I get further along, I'll see how everything is fitting. So thank you for coming on this journey. Often when you are cutting out a pattern, you will fold your fabric in half so you can cut both pieces out in just a single cutting session. With silk, it's a little bit different. If you want your stripes to match up or line up in a certain way, it's best to cut each pattern piece by itself. Now, one of the reasons I got such a great deal on this silk is there are several areas that have pull marks. So I'm kind of also making sure that my pattern pieces are being laid out around those defects. Now this piece can actually go over that section because it's going to become a ruffle, and so you won't really be able to see the defect in the fabric. So here I go with the first cut. Don't you just love my fabric weight? He's very fitting for the season. All right, so I cut out those first pieces, and then using the placement of the previous piece, I have lined up the pattern piece in the exact same spot. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind is you want to flip your pattern pieces over when you're cutting out the second piece so that the fabric will be even on the opposite side. And with silk, another great tip is just to pin on the very edge. You never want to put pins in the center. You can use fabric weights because even silk pins, which are very, very thin, will leave a mark. Now this is where the seam line is going to go, so my pin marks won't show. But that's just a good tip to keep in mind. I successfully got all of my pattern pieces cut out and I'm ready to begin sewing. So I think this is an excellent place to stop the video for this week, and I'll share my progress in next week's video. Now, in addition to this video, I'm also writing a post on my website that works in conjunction with the video. So if you want more in-depth details, please visit Decor to Adore. And again, I'll put that link down in the description. Happy sewing! Okay, be quiet, okay? Go get up in your bed.